Oh, Rob. Oh, never mind. I had one. That's cool. You're good. Appreciate it.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Maddie Hornsby. I'm the project manager for the Riot organization. Welcome to the Riot Lunch and Learn series. This place is where we spotlight Riot sponsors. And today we have Eli Sheets, founder and CEO of Ideablock, to talk about protecting software intellectual property in 2021. Just a few quick reminders before we get started. This event is being recorded and will be posted to Riot's YouTube channel and uploaded to the meetup page where you're registered for this event. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, throw it in the chat and I will be monitoring the chat and letting the audience know if and they will be answered after the event. And please keep yourself muted throughout the entire event. And now I'll throw it over to Eli. Welcome, Eli.
Thank you, Maddie. Appreciate the opportunity, and I'm looking forward to sharing a little bit about what we're doing at Ideablock and also kind of in the context of protecting software this year and going forward. So thanks for everybody for showing up. I know that it's kind of a dreary day here, and there are a lot of people in line for gas right now. So you obviously have all gassed up your vehicle or just stayed home, frankly, as I did. My wife didn't listen to me, and was waiting in line today. So, but she's, it seems like we're a little short right now, but anyway, we'll get some work done here. So I came in today, I wanted to chat about how we protect software as intellectual property. It's really been a kind of a hot topic of discussion for attorneys over the last 10 years, because we're seeing a lot of the old traditional ways of protecting software or not protecting software in the case of open source, which is also big around this region, have kind of a huge sea change in how this is done. There have been some decisions handed down by the Supreme Court in the last few years that have really limited the ways that you can protect software with traditional forms of intellectual property. So, there's a lot of education right now to be done in terms of what the options are and what we're working on here at Ideablock, and I'll talk a little bit more in depth about what we're doing. But as a general overview, we're actually using blockchain technology, specifically Bitcoin, to essentially protect any type of intellectual property, and that includes software, instantly using that Bitcoin technology. So we can drill down on that a little bit, exactly how that works and how Ideablock does that. But kind of in the context of software, it's we think Ideablock is a great tool to use in conjunction with your other software tools that you're using to develop, or companies using to kind of rein in all their workflow in the software realm to kind of scoop it all up, protect it instantly, have defensive protection over that, and we think potentially become a more robust form of IP protection for software going forward. I think we're out a little bit ahead of it, but that's a good place to be, right? So so without further ado, first let's get this out of the way real quick. Just a little bit about myself. I did not walk in off the street to get this. I have a few credentials, but so I am background in engineering and programming and software development. I started coding really early in my life. My father was CTO of Cray Computer. Not sure if any of you have heard of that, but they from the early 80s up until last year when they were bought by Hewlett Packard, made some of the most the fastest computers in the world. They're still producing them inside of HP for those kind of things like defense, cyber defense, cryptography, weather mapping, and all that kind of stuff. Big computational pull on those machines, and so we kind of dinner time conversation growing up was computers and all the other kind of normal family stuff. But I got exposed to that pretty early, and continued to kind of gravitate toward that. Went to college, did my education in engineering at first at MIT, then University of Wisconsin-Madison. After that, went and worked as a USPTO examiner in Alexandria, Virginia. So I spent about 2 years working for the government doing essentially examining patents for potential inventions, and basically kind of cut my teeth there in terms of learning the law and applying it to essentially what I learned at in engineering school. And then after that, decided it's time to kind of step up and go to law school. I wanted to be an attorney, IP attorney, and the next logical step was to go to law school, and went to University of New Hampshire, which is one of the big IP schools in the world as a specialty. Went there obviously 3 years. Afterwards, went and clerked for federal judges in Chicago and at the First Circuit Court of Appeals in Boston. And after that, went to Washington, started practicing law, intellectual property law, specifically patent law for multinational large firm. We were doing a lot of work in 5G standard setting patents. So we had some clients that were big players in that industry and still are, working on those kind of high stakes patent prosecutions. So after doing that, my family and I, my family was getting bigger. Grandparents lived here, and we moved down from DC to Raleigh. Practiced here for about another year and a half, and then kind of got into some of the blockchain stuff early on, Bitcoin and blockchain, and kind of realization that not only was it a way to transfer digital currency, but along with that, there was potential to timestamp anything you wanted to, right? Any type of file, including intellectual property. And in the IP world, no matter whether you're talking about copyrights all the way through trade secrets and beyond, if you're first, ultimately you're going to win in some form. So with the ability to use blockchain to provide irrefutable timestamping proof of the conception of an idea all the way through from beginning to even to product launch, all the way through instantly and forever in an irrefutable manner, you're able to timestamp as you build something and protect that instantly. So, and that includes software, which we'll kind of be digging down on specifically. So that's kind of the basic overview of what Ideablock does. I'll talk a little bit more about the nitty gritty coming up. So let's see. Yeah, practiced for a bunch of firms and moved down here. And after practicing, I just kind of said, hey, I have this idea. I was lucky enough to have some support from some backers, and was able to jump ship and start my own business. So we've been at Ideablock for a couple of years now. We've built a beta that's fully functional, and now in the next month we'll be releasing our first enterprise edition, first non-beta edition that is really robust and really, really cool. So anyway, so what I want to talk about today, obviously, is software, intellectual property, and the ways that software can be protected. Wanted to first kind of go over just a real quick IP overview to make sure everybody's kind of on the same page about what are the different kinds of IP that you can use to protect anything, and kind of focus in on the ones that software usually falls under. Then kind of go through a history of how software has been protected, what's being done now, and then kind of looking ahead to the future, what we think will be kind of the future of how you will do that going forward, as some of the current and past tools that were built for kind of an industrialized society are struggling to keep up with the reality of the business market and the software development market, which is a long way away from steam and iron, right? So and then obviously if there's any questions, or we'll close up with those. So first of all, yeah, just a quick little overview of the 4 traditional forms of intellectual property. First, I mean, I know that in the tech world, a lot of people talk first about patents, right? So a patent is something you must essentially apply for the government. The government, if they allow your patent claims, that you say you're the first one to do this, if it's novel, if it's not obvious, you will receive a time limited monopoly over the breadth of those claims that were allowed in that patent document by the U.S. Judiciary. And obviously the keys there, first of all, the trade you make with the government is that, in the patent document, you're going to disclose to the world what exactly this technology is, so that industry can move forward based on a collective knowledge of these things that are disclosed, and kind of in exchange for that knowledge being revealed, you get that limited monopoly. Copyrights are, people think, of copyrights, you think of music, and obviously with this group, I think there's probably some people that also think of code, and you think anything that's a work of authorship. And what a copyright is, it's not issued in the way that a patent is. Instead, a copyright is actually self-revealing, in that when you put pen to paper, or you put fingers to, whatever code tool you're using, whether you're using Vim or whatever to write your code, once it's written, it's actually the copyright is created in common law the second that it's put down in the computer. However, you have to go register it with the federal government, the Copyright Office, in order to be able to take someone to court over infringement on that. So although it exists, it's the second you make it, it's actually just kind of this thing without any power until you actually go, and like many things in life, pay the government to tell you that you now have something. So once that's done, you can now sue for people who have stolen, that exact copy, or tried to sell that exact copy of what you've made in terms of authorship. Trademarks, and as kind of common knowledge as to what kind of those are in terms of Coca-Cola, all these big brands, but really what it is used for is to show an origin of a good, and it's really a public safety measure in that trying to stop counterfeits and keeping the public aware of where their goods are coming from, right? Next and final, the trade secrets. So trade secrets are, much like they sound, it's just a secret. It's something that you, instead of going to get a patent on it, which requires, as you recall, disclosure of that idea to the government in exchange for protection, you skip that and you don't tell anyone, right? And the protection afforded to you, if you choose to keep it secret, is protection against people actively stealing it from you, stealing that secret from you, which is called trade secret misappropriation. This has been, misappropriation cases have been pretty big lately. There's a couple of years ago, actually last year, only, it's been a long couple of years, but I think it was last year. It was Google's self-driving division versus Uber, where you had one guy leave one place and kind of take some of that self-driving car technology over. $9 billion case, I believe, in terms of settlement and value. So, the trade secret cases that make it all the way to court or maybe even appealed, those typically start with a B and not an M in terms of what the value is there. So, and we'll come back to trade secrets in a little bit in some detail. So looking at software IP, and there's a lot of stuff we're kind of glaze over here because there's a long history of it since the really the late 70s. But in the first three and a half decades of software being a thing, right? Something where you're essentially commanding this new thing called a computer to perform actions, right? The actual IP that's created in those instructions traditionally was able to be protected under the roof of those four traditional types of IP. So, again, harkening back to what I said before, traditionally people think of copyrights as a vehicle for protecting IP. So you look at, a DVD, right? People hawking DVDs on the corner that they've burned, in 1999. That's copyright infringement, right? Now there's a little more technology involved and kind of puts a damper on that. But also, as we'll talk about in a second, the way that software is developed has changed, and disseminated has changed a lot since then, even in the last 15 years, 10 years really. So that has made it really difficult to justify copyright as a main thoroughbred for IP protection for software. And then again, patents. I mean, people, you hear a lot about software patents, quote unquote. There's really software patents. People throw that term around. I've asked legal scholars about this before. Can you tell me what a software patent is? Because it doesn't have a definition legally. And if you look at 60% of the inventions that are submitted to the patent office, software is a critical component of those patent claims. And some of it might be, look at like a Tesla patent, right? For maybe a chassis on a Tesla that's moving, according to certain user input. Like it's most of that innovation is in the software, but is that a software patent, or is it a way that they rivet the steel together? It really becomes conflated, and I'm always really careful when I talk about software patents to not claim that this is a rigid and defined type of patent. It's really just an overarching term for generally something that uses software to bring forward the main thrust of the invention, right? And the way this was done, especially in the last couple of decades, was you would write patent claims that would say, okay, here are, let's take like a recursive algorithm in software code where it's, maybe your patent claim would say, a method implemented by a hardware or computer device that does multiple iterations of an algorithm recursively, right? That was what a claim would kind of look like. And as long as you put in, this process is being done, right? The recursive algorithm, and said, okay, a computer's doing this. Now you have a computer, a physical thing that feels more like a patent, right? And not these electrons moving around based on ones and zeros and code, C++ code that's sitting on, the RAM right there by the processor, right? So it was more process based, and what is the software doing, right? And then if you tack on, a computer does it, then it becomes something that the courts tended to kind of let go, right? This is a process still, because even though it's being done by a computer, it's really a process, and processes are able to be patented, right? Especially if they're tied to some kind of hardware. Well, in the last 5 years, there's been a series of decisions. Most recently, and I can talk about these in a minute here, I got a different slide that have kind of turned that on its head. And there's been a big debate. I don't know who's followed this about whether software patents should even be a thing. There's a large open source community, obviously, that feels that's a bad thing. That this code, especially core APIs that are used to kind of as the building blocks of larger systems, those should not require a license or exorbitant license to pay to use these to actually build stuff up. And there's actually a Supreme Court case that came out last month that talked about APIs and whether those are protectable, but that's outside the scope here. But so those two forms, copyright and patents, yes, they've traditionally been used as vehicles, but they are kind of falling out of favor. So let's look at copyright. So when you look at a copyright, when you're going to sue someone for infringement of a copyright, it essentially, there's some slight exceptions, but you have to have the exact copyrighted material being sold in order to get any value back if you sue that person, right? So if you look at, I remember we got back home and we would install like Microsoft developer suite at home in like the late 90s. There were legitimately like 32 compact discs that you had to plug in consecutively to get that on, and you can't change what's on that. It's fixed to that CD. So if you sold the CD, it's got the ones and zeros that were on that disc, and that's kind of represented here, by the floppy. Is that software was disseminated for a long time in different kinds of physical media that was sold, at Best Buy or Newegg or wherever you go get your software. But that's really changed a lot in the last 10 years, where now, with the new world where everyone's connected to the internet, I guess there's two separate issues here. Is that it's much easier to pipe that information in straight from your internet connection, and you don't have to deal with physical media anymore. You're not going to buy, typically, you're not going to buy an app. You go to the app store, right? You go to download, Homebrew, either from a repository online or something like that, and it downloads, right? So the dissemination aspect has changed completely, but also the way that software is created and updated has changed. So traditionally with copyrights, you have to copyright if you change anything in the code, you're gonna have to file a new copyright. So I'm sure that there's a few developers in here, to think that every time you change that code as a group, maybe you're working in Jira, or you're working in Git, or to keep the code straight. Every time somebody makes a change, theoretically you'd have to file a new copyright every time something was changed, a routine was changed, and they were added, or a version, minor versions were added and pushed. That's a lot of stuff, right? That's a lot of copyrights that you'd have to file. And because of the kind of the more rapid updating cycle that's become the norm, it's more of a hindrance than anything, right? To be on top of that. And so, you look at this on the right here, this is GitHub's logo. GitHub is a code repository software for, or version control software for that a lot of people use, that was recently bought by Microsoft for several $billion, mind you. But that is one tool where a lot of developers use to update daily, even minute by minute. Large teams working with a very large code base, thinking of that as boom, boom, boom. We have to file a copyright every time someone presses a button and pushes it to the repository. That becomes a pragmatic issue, right? Next, so this is kind of an overarching comment on what's happened with software patents in the last 5 to 10 years. The big similar case on this was 2014 with Alice versus CLS Bank. It's no longer enough for people to claim, I'm doing this process by software, and you describe the process that you're doing by software, and it's going to be implemented on a computer. That's not enough, said the Supreme Court, right? And it's caused all kinds of issues in the kind of software industry. It's like, okay, it doesn't look like we can patent anything to do with software anymore, but we're investing billions and billions of dollars into this. How do we protect this investment, right? There's no real home for software anymore that screams, hey, this is home, this is what you should do, this is the orthodox way to do this, right? And really, over the last 5 years, I'm freely going to admit, not a lot of attorneys know what to do, because the government's been very wishy-washy on what they're going to do in terms of interpreting these different court cases that come out after CLS Bank, or Alice versus CLS Bank. And so no one really knows what the future has in store when it comes to software patenting itself. So in the meantime, it becomes this, sure, we'll try to copyright everything, and maybe we'll file a patent on some stuff, but really it's, as the law stands right now, it's a bit of a waste of money unless something U-turns in by the time that particular patent application is examined, right? So where do we sit? We have no stable home for software IP and copyright or patent, right? So some have been looking, and I'm one of them. I've had clients in my practice that were software type companies, and one of the strategies I've kind of championed is using trade secret for as much as you can. So if you're not going to disseminate this freely, if you're using it internally as software internally, stuff that isn't necessarily going to be seen, which would essentially, a trade secret would go poof the second that you publicly disseminate it. But stuff used internally, stuff that's you use for specific contracts with a limited number of people. Trade secrets, signing contracts, keeping that code base secret, is a really great way to kind of sidestep the copyright and patent conundrum right now. But it really, even though it's a little bit better right now, it doesn't really hit home and make you feel all fuzzy if you have something that's going out into the public, right? So, which software, if you have clients that want to use it, is a goal, right? So, in terms of the future and kind of what we've been working on, and one of the main reasons Ideablock was created was to take blockchain technology and be able to use it as proof that something was created, right? You can keep it secret. If you want to make it open source, you can make it public as well. And we will, the Ideablock software will publish that code base, much like GitHub can do in a public repository. But unlike GitHub or Bitbucket or some of the other well-known public ones, when you go to court in 15 years, you're not going to have to, with Ideablock, you're not going to have to go pull someone from GitHub or Atlassian for Bitbucket on the stand and say, okay, was this on this server at this certain time? Was it public? Did it go private? All of those questions that make public disclosure and IP proof in time, make those kind of fuzzy. They all disappear when you use a tool that uses blockchain. And this is why, as soon as your code is tethered to the blockchain using Ideablock, you have an entire network, the most powerful distributed network in the world, around the clock, validating the truth of that existing at that specific time. So now you don't need a third-party human to come in later. There's just proof inside of the chain that is immutable and unchangeable from the moment that you put it up there. The theory being, we don't need, humans are fallible. Evidence using blockchain is provably true, provably unchangeable, and we can go forward with some, solid security, knowing that we've proven, if we were truly first, that we had it at this particular time, right? And that can be used. The proof mechanisms can be used to show that to potential, potential legal troubles going forward, right? In the IP realm, whether that's a trade secret, whether that's something that's disseminated publicly as an open source project, right? In terms of open source, right? If there's some open source people in here and interested in that, you're not really necessarily worried about protecting it for future revenue. But one thing you may be worried about with open source is you don't want a third party who wants to capitalize and make money off of this particular open source project. You don't want them to go run to the patent office, or if they theoretically, if they could get a patent on it, and block you and your open source users from using it, right? So one way to stop them from gaining that form of intellectual property is, during your development of that open source project, is use something like Ideablock to put it up there, timestamp it, and then make it public, disseminate that open source in alignment with Ideablock, so that your publication of that open source code becomes what's called prior art against third parties, where you can prove that you had it before they stole it from you. Any attempt to gain a patent on that later on, even copyright later on, can be essentially nuked by your proof inside of our platform, right? So it becomes a defensive tool, a shield against future potential plaintiffs. So let's see here. So, going on that note, one of the tools, in addition to the web-based, we have a really intuitive web-based tool to upload any type of idea via any file. So you take any idea, any type of intellectual property that you could think of, a widget, a new drug, anything. The files that's described in, whether that's a code file, a selfie of you, running a prototype, anything. we bundle those files once you upload them, hash them using a hashing algorithm, and put that hash, which proves one-to-one that you have this particular set of files, put that directly into the chain, right? So it's time-stamped. It can be proven anytime later on in time, right? What Ideablock commit does, this was specifically made for coders and for people who use Git. I don't know for any of you are familiar with Git versioning software, as an add-on to every time that you commit your code or save your code as a team or an individual, that commit will be put on chain as well, without any additional commands other than turning Ideablock commit on inside of that particular repository. So let's see if I can share this. How am I doing, Maggie or Maddie? All right. Let's see.
Yep, doing great on time, Eli.
Good. So I just wanted to show a quick little demo of what you get when you use Ideablock commit. So this is, I'm just going to pull up a terminal here. So it's terminal based, and I'm trying to see if I can hit this share button because it's all black on my screen right now. But let's see if I can do this maybe. There we go. Okay, so this is just a terminal window, and you can go get it right now on npm. So npmjs.org, I believe, is the overarching site that hosts this. But you can download this software right now and use it in beta mode today if you'd like. You can find that at sign up at beta.ideablock.io as well. You need some credentials to use it, but I've already downloaded on this machine, and I have a repository that we use for some of the cryptography tools that makes Merkle trees out of hashes for any math nerds out there, that we wrote. It's called Merkler. So I'm inside of this repository right now. So those are the files inside of that the repository locally, and all you have to do once Ideablock commits downloaded onto your machine is just turn it on inside the repository. So Ideablock commit init, now it's on, right? So anytime that you commit code inside of this repository now, it will do the magic of pinning your entire repository, bundling it, saving it for you as a redundant copy as well locally. But also the more important thing in terms of protection, it's going to put all of the hashes and the hash of the code itself into Bitcoin instantly, right? So let's do that. So we have a bunch of code in this and files in this particular folder. The one that I'm going to change is I'll just do nano test. So I just made a test text file. So it's just a blank text file. I got to make a change here, so I'll just do testing now, and then save that, exit out, and now a change is made. So I'm going to add all the files, including the one I just changed to the by issuing git add, and then now I'm going to commit the code, and you'll see how it automatically spits out all the information to you and saves it in a specific place locally, so you have all that information. So I'll just issue a git commit with a message of testing Ideablock as what I'm doing here, and cross your fingers. Let's see. Yeah, it's tethering commit to blockchains, and now your commit's been successfully tethered using Ideablock. And what the information you get in this in the chart here proves that as of now, your code is in the current state that it's in, using the power and the proof power of blockchain. So first of all, the first line Bitcoin hash, this is the location. So this is actually an address inside the Bitcoin blockchain where your code's stored. Litecoin as well. It's just a redundant chain that we use. So each commit inside of Git has several hashes associated with it to show authenticity. So what we do, or what I've done, is I take this is issued by Git. I take this, okay? You can see it's F99A94C. This is the repository hash, which is the SHA-256 hash of all of the files zipped into an archive file. And then we take a parity digit, which is essentially a random number between 0 and 9, and we stick it on there for additional integrity. Okay, so when I look at this is the important hash that's going to is actually, as of now, being put into Bitcoin and Litecoin's blockchain, is all of these, or the important one of these, concatenated together, right? So if you look at the commit short hash, that's not even issued by us, so we have no control over this, right? And that's powerful in terms of proof, because we couldn't monkey with that even if we wanted to. But that goes first. Okay. Next is the repository hash. Again, the SHA-256 hash of all the files that are in there, and it'll come all the way down to the D there. You can see it's the same as this here. And then we throw the parity digit on the end. So now we have 3 different pieces of data, right? That were essentially created by 3 different parties, all mashed together into this long kind of code string, right? And that's what we put into Bitcoin. And you can see locally, it also stores it at this location. So now, if you want to go back and look at all of these proofs and go find it in the chain, all of that information is stored for you locally here. And you can obviously go back that up in any way you want. It's also backed up on your cloud-based Ideablock account. When you go get your credentials, it's all there in a form that only you can see it, right? So it's, in case this code is a trade secret, we don't want to go make that public, right? But this is something, just a tool that we developed specifically for coders that, frankly, I love this tool. I use it all the time, and I more than anything, just kind of wanted to show it and say, if any of your developers, feel free to go use it. It's kind of cool, and it really proves your stuff out as you're developing it all the way through the life cycle of development. So let's see here. I'm going to share this. I change my screen one more time. Should be it. Are we back? I think we're back. Okay, so all of that worked just so I could put up questions.
Yeah, so we don't have any questions in the chat right now, but everyone feel free to throw some questions in the chat, and then I'll read them aloud to Eli, and then we'll see what his response.
Hey, Ray's in there. How we doing, Ray? He's muted. You're muted, Ray. Yeah.
How's that?
You have any questions, Ray?
I got lots of questions. Hang on, the phone's ringing. Sorry.
I got a question. Why's your ringer on?
No, I know, it's very bad form, isn't it?
No,
I thought I was muted. I thought I was muted, but I'm unmuted now. Well, yeah, it's fascinating, Eli. I've always been very interested in this. You know that. And I would love to find a way that we can do something with Crumb's music.
Mm-hmm. For those of you who don't know, I'm just going to give a brief introduction. Ray is if any of you saw the Elton John movie, he's the young kid who's got the foot on it, his feet up on the boss's desk. He introduced Elton John to Bernie Taupin, and we've been working together for protecting music for a long time. So I know he doesn't know how to code, so I don't know what the hell he's doing in here, but you know what? I love him anyway. No, I'm kidding you, Ray. But it's Ray's been a great supporter and someone who, testament to, I think, kind of what we're doing is, people have been in the industry for protecting, IP in the music form, media form, code, even, widgets and industrial stuff. It doesn't really matter. It's anything that you need to have instant defensive protection that's going to go forward forever and never be changed or scrutinized. You got it today with Ideablock. So anyway, Ray,
yeah,
hope you're doing well, and let me know if you got any questions.
Well, I do. I really, I know how long you've been working on this. I've always got the gist of it. I may not understand the code, et cetera, but I get the idea of protecting, you know, IP and the way things change. And I really would love to, now we've been doing a lot of work on Crumb's music, and it's getting to a point where, you know, protecting our code, protecting our copyrights, protecting our ideas.
Yeah, I mean, and it's a great tool, especially for people who, you know, are starting to bootstrap, you know, whether you're doing, you know, a small gaming company or something, and you don't have the deep pockets right away to go, you know, go file, you know, if you do go to file a patent application on something, you know, it's basically like flushing 60 grand down the toilet at this point, but you know, you can do it. You don't have to do it. And you can use Ideablock to essentially get that first, you know, robust baseline layer of protection, and not have to worry about coming up with that cash, right? It's very affordable, and quick, light touch, and it still gives you kind of that robust functionality to of going forward, not staying awake at night wondering whether, you know, Joe Blow down the street is looking over your shoulder at the terminal, right? So
Awesome.
Also,
So,
sorry.
sorry. Go ahead, Ray. No problem.
I'm just saying, I mean, it has great value, I think, when people are creating ideas in a studio and keeping tabs on who contributed what to what.
Mhm.
So you don't get the argument of, I think this is right. If you've got 3 or 4 people collaborating, you're able to, in a studio, to write a song or record or whatever. You can basically keep tabs on the people that contributed to that.
yeah, and it's, you know, right there's no
about,
yeah.
well, I did this and I did that, and writers and creators get into loads of arguments over who did what.
That
I think this is
coders, people who develop code never argue about who did what, so don't worry about that in development. No, I'm just joking. It happens every day. So it's definitely another good feature of what we're doing is that you can prove who did what, and there's some interesting use cases off of that, that I think Ray understands very well. Any other comments?
Yes. So we have 2 questions actually in the chat, Eli. The first one is, how has your subscription model evolved as you've progressed through beta and into paying customer realm? And then the second part of that is, how are solo inventors / package supported versus enterprise customers?
Yeah, so I'll take the first part, you know, this SaaS, you know, subscription model. You know, it hasn't changed much in theory or structure. There have been little tweaks, because, you know, as you move up, you know, in any SaaS offering, it's, you know, the big boys want certain features and might want to push around some different pricing on, you know, maybe the attorneys are a little more expensive because they're going to be using it a lot. Maybe the developers are only, or people who are the idea people are only using it, you know, once a day, or, you know, a couple times a week to get their stuff up there. Whereas the attorneys would be living in there trying to vet ideas and make sure that they go to the right spot. So we've seen, you know, this idea of, we've actually tested it out with a client in terms of having different usage tiers for the kind of role inside of an enterprise setting. And if you go to like a solo entrepreneur level, we have a tier for that as well. That's very affordable. You know, I don't want to call it the Dropbox model necessarily, but, you know, where you can come in and, you know, our current number is, you know, 3 ideas for free, right? You know, if you're kind of a garage inventor developer that's made something, you want to just put your finished code up, you know, you get 3 of those for free. And then, you know, as you continue to progress, then there's an entry level kind of, you know, premium or plus paid tier. We do have to keep the lights on. We have to keep your ideas stored in the cloud. So yeah.
Awesome. I think that kind of ties over into Andrew's question of how does the cost structure work, and can you use the platform to document proprietary data creation, maybe like in FT?
Yeah, so you can, in terms of what you can use it for, you can really use it for pretty much anything, frankly. If you want to, if you, really timestamps anything. So if you're looking for, if you're trying to create like a training set for AI, for example, or in terms of kind of the IoT setting, if you're getting environmental feedback and you want to take some of that, or user feedback or sensor feedback, and you want to run that log down, obviously, that's not necessarily, and that's kind of a hot IP issue right now, whether that's IP or not, but let's assume it is. That IP can be placed inside of the platform just as easily as any other kind. So yes, we've talked to people about using it as maybe not necessarily like a code base protector, but coming back where I've got an environment, maybe it's EdgeNet, kind of we're at the edge of the network, trying to say, okay, we got these environment variables, maybe they're changing, maybe the algorithms moving some of the core characteristics of the system around based on feedback. It's things are changing, and can I do this automatically? And the answer is yes.
Awesome, Eli. Well, that's all the questions I'm seeing. I'll leave the floor open for one more minute. But in the meantime, what's the best way for the audience to connect with you, Eli?
Yeah, so our website is ideablock.io. We recently put a fresh coat of paint on it. We're pretty proud of that, the way it looks right now. And in the near future, there'll be direct access to this next version, the non-beta version, which is very robust, especially if you have a company with a lot of different groups that are creating things together. It not only serves as a way to protect, to get that in the system, but once it's in the system, you can organize it. You can very broad-based feature set in terms of sharing and permissions inside of that, and also analytics. Also, kind of talking about data. Once the data gets in there in your company, we analyze that for you as well to give you feedback about, for example, what are the highest producing groups of engineers at the company, which groups are pumping out the code, that kind of thing, and then revenue, where are we going to invest our dollars into IP, this forecasting functionality that we're working on putting into the system as well right now. So there's a lot of cool stuff coming. Also, if you want to email me directly, my email is eli@ideablock.io. So Eli at basically our website. We're starting to open up here a little more. We've got a pretty big office here, and we have meetings here quite often. If even stop by, we got the AC on, and pretty comfortable in here. So come on, hang out, have a drink, and we'll talk.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Eli. And thank you to everyone who joined. I hope everyone has a great rest of the day. And if you're in Raleigh, stay dry. Awesome. Well, I'll go ahead and end the meeting for now, but please reach out if anybody has any other questions. Okay. Thank you all.
Appreciate it.